Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Gabby. My name is Matt Douglas. I run our solutions engineering group here in the channel, and probably all of you have heard too much of me. I'm excited actually to have John Lloyd join us here, who's our Director of Cloud Networking. So John, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey in the company here and kind of what you're doing now on the SD-WAN side. I think it'd be interesting.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So John Lloyd, I'm going in, just crested the 8-year mark with CBTS. And so my journey really used to work under Matt Douglas under solutions enablement and engineering. And so solution design, engineering, et cetera, and really kind of, I would say, focused on route switch, understand a lot of the traditional voice side as well, but really was passionate about route switch. And the SD-WAN, I would say, entry to the scene 4 or 5 years ago really took an ache into, and that was kind of where I continued down my path. And so for going on 2 years soon, I've had responsibility for the cloud networking practice. So we compile about 9 different products from development to engineering, implementation, operations, et cetera. And the flagship of that practice is the VeloCloud SD-WAN.
Oh, fantastic. One of the things in our last session, we kind of, Rob Messmer and I kind of talked a little bit about the bigger picture of SD-WAN in general. And I think today what we're trying to do here is to go kind of a deeper dive into some of the things that we see VeloCloud really excel at. And that's why I think we're excited here to have John. One of the things, of course, if you don't know this, is a little bit of market share, really, of what VeloCloud's done in the market in the last couple of years. Share with us a little bit, John, kind of on what you've seen in the VeloCloud side. I know you spend quite a bit of time with leadership even on the VeloCloud side.
Yeah, I think I always joke. One of my favorite things is when salespeople will call and say, "Hey, tell me why VeloCloud's the best," right? And I was well, what's the customer trying to accomplish? What are their goals? Sure. What are their business outcomes? And so I always start with the right SD-WAN is what's the right SD-WAN for the customer. There's a reason, and Gartner doesn't have them all in here, but I think that right now, last count, there's 66 unique SD-WAN manufacturers in the marketplace. And what I really like about the staying power of VMware, and I think we'll talk a little bit today of what makes it different and what makes it unique, but we were 3 years ahead of Gartner at CBTS. We did our own testing. We built our own labs, and we wanted to understand, and this was long before giant OEMs owned a lot of these SD-WAN players. They were startups. They were the dot-coms from Silicon Valley. And it was understanding what I call the difference between architecture and marketecture. It's one thing to say, I can do A, B, and C, as opposed to, well, what's the outcome of that, and what does it impact? And so really, we identify 2 gigantic differentiators when we look at VMware SD-WAN by VeloCloud. The first one is when organizations say, my network's shifting and I'm looking to replace MPLS because applications are moving to the cloud. So I've got a very strong cloud strategy and I need to find a way to deliver the same reliability or performance that I used to in my private, expensive network. And then the second component is a lot of SD-WAN finally came around to that. And it became go and get 2 links, go and get 3 links. And I think a lot of customers now are starting to have more faith in what we would consider best effort transports, things that are delivered GPON or fiber, symmetrical circuits. You can get gig by gig now, just not carrying an SLA for a few $100s a month. So people are trusting reliable transport a little bit more. But what that allows them to do is save money, but also can introduce a lot of risk. And so we're going to talk about some of the things VeloCloud can do to help enable you to use a single link with an LTE backup, driving down cost while still increasing performance and increasing network uptime. So anytime I talk with a customer and they say, my initiatives involve a cloud strategy and looking at a reduction in network spend without sacrificing performance or reliability, those are the 2 categories. If you were to stack rank all the SD-WAN players, those are the 2 that VeloCloud's going to shine above everybody else. There are very unique use cases. Obviously, the other organizations you see up here are very strong, and they're great products, and they continue to be bought by other giant players because they do things well. Every SD-WAN company does something well. We just look across the board, and the market agrees, and Gartner agrees that VeloCloud is the most versatile because organizations are adopting the cloud, and they are adopting cost savings, especially in the current 2020 environment.
Yep, and I think you bring up a great point too, is that the partners, I think, on this webcast as well, is we try and be very consultative. You mentioned business outcomes because you can't be all things to all people. So I think it's a good point that we want to first focus on the customer needs. Let's start to get a little bit deeper into really some of the specific attributes, and we're going to have some more slides here, but I think some of the things that mention, on the slide here really is about packet duplication and forward error correction. We're going to talk about some of those things. We're going to talk about service chaining. But give us your thoughts just a little bit, again, this architecture, some of the points here about what you see as some of the big advantages in VeloCloud.
Yeah, so, I think in general, let's start with what are the advantages of SD-WAN, right? Well, everyone promises, I'm going to be agile, I'm going to be flexible, and I'm going to be adaptable. That's got to start being cloud delivered, right? I think we learned something in this work from home environment of overnight sending everybody home. When resources are still locked or trapped in my network, that makes it very hard, regardless of what the technology is. So even if I'm adaptive because I create auto VPNs, if I'm adaptive because I can use, dynamic transport, that's great. But when that controller is still sitting in my data center, I really struggle to be as agile. So I think that the concept of being purely cloud delivered, the idea that not every application is created equally, and a lot of times that wasn't as prevalent until work from home, when now you're competing with Netflix and video games and all of that fun stuff. But the big difference for us as we look at the why VeloCloud is going back to, I always use the example, there was a credit monitoring company that had a line of commercials last year, and the guy's in a bank, and the bank's getting robbed, and they say, hey, the bank's getting robbed, what are you going to do about it? And he says, I'm just the bank monitor, right? I just let you know. That to me is what most SD-WAN does. I have link A and link B, and I just let you know if the link's performing poorly or not. And I'll move it over to link B, but again, that's assuming there is a link B. And so I think an industry that this is really prevalent in is, think retail. I mean, the retailer had 4,000 locations, and they said, even if I get a $100 a month broadband backup, that's times 4,000 locations. That's $400,000 a month for a circuit that I hope to never use. And so the second circuit's not just about a backup strategy. It's about how does my SD-WAN deliver a reliable network over a primary circuit. And for us, that packet duplication, even over a single link, that's a gigantic difference. That's not flow-based. It's not steering an application. It's saying, hey, when I see something, when I see packet loss, when I see jitter and delay, I'm going to enhance that application. I'm not going to just move it somewhere else if there is somewhere else.
Yeah, no, I agree. The other thing too is mentioned on here, the idea about a WAN agnostic. We still are talking to a number of customers who, even if they've got, let's say, 50 locations of MPLS, may be wanting to leave 5 of those, a couple data centers, a headquarters, some distribution facilities, and then other locations be completely on internet. And VeloCloud is very strong in that hybrid environment as well. So, all right, so let's talk about them. Let's get into a little bit of the details. And you mentioned it earlier a little bit, this idea of cloud access and gateways. I know that you work with VeloCloud and VMware a lot about how we touch their global set of gateways. If I remember correctly, there's a couple thousand global gateways. Is that correct?
Yes, I think they're at like 2,200 at the latest from their points of presence. Yeah.
Okay, and I know we're part of that ecosystem, if you would. Talk to me a little bit about what you see as the big advantage of VeloCloud using these cloud gateways for business outcomes like we talked about earlier. Yeah,
so there's a couple of things, right? Let's get back to where I talked about the idea of SD-WAN of if I have multiple links, I can steer traffic, right? We talked about how Velo's got a unique benefit with a single link. But when I do have 2 links, right, or if I'm another SD-WAN provider who's doing this great steering over 2 links, what happens when that link is from your edge back to your data center or your branch to your branch? I can do all of the SD-WAN things. And I can maybe run a virtual license in my IaaS or PaaS platform. But what about pure SaaS play, right? And so these gateways, the first thing it allows me to do is serve as a multi-tenanted but segmented hub, meaning I can have multiple customers on it, but they each get their own segment. There's no overlap. There's no concern around data privacy. So I'm extending my network to my application that's left, right? I'm extending it to Salesforce. I'm extending it to Office 365. The same way that I would say from here to my data center, which path is best, or how's it performing, what's the bandwidth I have available. I'm doing those same things right to the VeloCloud gateway. So that's important for a couple of reasons. Not only am I bookending traffic and I'm choosing the right or the best path, but I'm also getting as close to the application as possible. And so most of these distributed applications or distributed cloud architectures are going to do a geo-IP lookup. And so they're going to say, oh, I can tell, you know, if you ever go on your phone and if you're scrolling through and you get targeted ads and it's like drivers in your city save 15%, or, you know, maybe it's for some local restaurant, they're understanding where you're physically at. And that's returning or choosing which path you want to go to. And so what we're doing with VeloCloud is we're ensuring you're getting to the closest gateway to you and the closest gateway to that application. And so we're not routing you to a gateway in New York to route to an application in Seattle. We're always understanding what is the best path. And so we're giving you that kind of first or last, depending on which side you look at it, first or last mile bookending. And then we're giving you that mid-mile cloud plugged directly into the cloud distribution networks. And another thing, you know, you talked about, so I explained geo-IP and how we're going to get to the SaaS clouds. When it comes to our compute or IaaS clouds, there's the virtual option. The other thing, we really found a great use case out of this is a layer 3 device. It's a NAT function inside of my network. And so what becomes important there, as we went to work from home, we saw customers that maybe weren't currently on VeloCloud. I can use that gateway as a termination device into my network. So when they call them an NVS or a non-Velo site, I can actually build an IPsec tunnel from that. What becomes important there is we look at a customer, say that's in AWS in Ashburn, Virginia. In order to live in AWS and to put an appliance in, that may be the right path for that customer, but it may not be. You may have very limited applications running there. However, to have a constant session going, you're paying for that data, that put, that get, and tunnel counts, et cetera. We have the ability to bookend that traffic directly to what we call a super gateway. And so all of my tunnel or all of my edges will create a tunnel to that gateway, and then I create one single IPsec tunnel into Ashburn. Or when I go to work from home, if I don't have VeloCloud, my data center from my Cisco router, I build a tunnel to that gateway. I can hang 1,000 employees off of it. So that gateway, it's not only about protecting the path, it's not only about getting the application as close as possible, but it's really about creating this flexible point into the network that allows me to be dynamic underneath it.
I think what I heard you say then, to kind of restate, is that we actually have use cases where they're not using SD-WAN at the edge of all their branches. We're using SD-WAN from work from home to build VPNs back to our gateway, and then we connect our gateway to their data center. And so
That's
we
right.
can, yeah, and I think that's a pretty important point. I know on our side too, on the voice side, we've got VeloCloud gateways sitting in our UCaaS core, and we use those to guarantee a service delivery, if you would, down to a customer premise. Even if they're not using VeloCloud at the edge, we'll put that VeloCloud box behind their other SD-WAN or behind their firewall. And so now we can even deliver voice reliably to their voice VLAN, even though they're not using a pure SD-WAN VeloCloud fabric. So I think it's some great points about how these gateways really, I've heard you talk about, and I've heard VMware talk about the new kind of network of clouds. What are all these clouds we have to connect to? And VeloCloud is absolutely the most advanced platform today to be able to build connections wherever you're working from. I know we've got a slide right here where we were talking about, we put this in because you and I were talking about it yesterday, of just how easy it is to drop in a virtual edge in an AWS or Azure environment.
Yeah, it's really about cost savings as well, right? So maybe I want to connect in, and maybe I do that off of a gateway, but maybe I want to advertise, my private subnets. I want to have my VPC from AWS. I want to live on a VPC and have that be a VeloCloud spoke in my network, or a VNet in Azure. And actually, VeloCloud can go into Google Cloud now. So there are support for GCP. And that becomes really important for this seamless integration for maybe DR. We're seeing a lot of organizations move to physical colo with cloud DR. And so having that route injected and auto-learned for automatic failover, it becomes very important. So I'm turning down ExpressRoute. I'm turning down MPLS. I'm turning down all of these expensive private networks that really were designed for exactly what we're talking about, Matt, which is the applications left my network. That was great. I got all the promises of the cloud. It was elastic. I could pay as I went. All the reasons I went to the cloud, but my end users aren't happy. Office 365 is slow. I moved my voice. You talked about we bookend our voice course. We also, have customers that are on competing voice platforms, and we still use VeloCloud and use the VeloCloud gateway to enhance that, right? We're still going to get as close to that session border controller as possible with this cloud gateway. And so that, to me, is the important thing here. When I go into my PaaS or IaaS environment, it's about turning down how expensive it used to have to be and how complex it used to have to be to connect into my cloud. No longer the case.
Yeah, I literally had a phone call this morning. We're talking about a POC with a customer. It's been on MPLS network. Everybody's coming home to their data centers. They've got an express route into AWS or Azure, and everything is moving to AWS or Azure and SaaS, and that simply is not an applicable path anymore. They have to do something different. And this just brings AWS and Azure. I talk about how it literally just brings those workloads right into your common VRF, your routing domain. It's all that traffic is protected. It's all IPsec encrypted, and it has all the advantages we've been talking about here so far. Talk a little bit, this next slide, this was not the one I wanted to do right here. Hold on just a minute. I'll go back that slide. I mentioned this customer earlier today, and they had an MPLS network, They've got backup internet. They're using DMVPN really kind of as their business continuity plan. And although it's tuned pretty well, applications still take a hit. It's not the most resilient in the world. Talk a little bit about what I think is such a big deal on the VeloCloud side, is I kind of call their DMPO protocol, if you would, kind of BGP and DMPN on steroids. So kind of talk a little bit about what you've seen as some of the advantages of this core technology.
Yeah, so we hit it early, right? Single link, right? That big difference, that big benefit. DMPO, or Dynamic Multipath Optimization, it's a Velo proprietary protocol that really is the secret sauce to that. A couple of things are going to happen. You mentioned about, kind of BGP on steroids. We think about running BGP, one of the learning routes, converging routes, understanding where people are at. Well, there's convergence time. We can run some things over the top processes to try to reduce those and tune those down with like bidirectional forwarding and things like that. We don't have to do that here. I've got two links. And what I'm going to do from VeloCloud Edge, I'm going to build a tunnel to all of my hubs and to two gateways. So maybe I have two hubs in my network. Those are my two data centers. And I've got my two gateways. I've got a persistent tunnel from edge to hub and edge to gateways across all available links. So I always understand how Path A and Path B are performing, including to the cloud gateways. And so if I start to see errors or have issues, I'm actually going to look to remediate it across multiple links. So if I can just move the link and everything's great, I want to do that, because I don't want to just start throwing duplicate packets or like the forward error correction. I think that's where you talk about your thing with voice of, there's only a certain amount of ECC bits or the error correction code bits that you can put in, and they're application specific. First, we're going to understand how these are both performing. And if one goes away, we're going to move that entire session over. But if both of them combine, one's down, or if they're both performing poorly, DMPO is going to do packet-based routing, not just simple FEC. And so it's going to put into that header the order that a packet should be coming in so it can be renumerated. It's going to duplicate the stream so that if there are packets lost, it's not using an algorithm to try to fill it in. It's actually filling the actual real packet in. And so I don't have any kind of loss algorithm ratio in that regards, right? Other than my time to live of the path, excuse me. So we're actually steering on a sub-second packet by packet basis, utilizing all of the bandwidth that's in my network. And if I only have a single link because my secondary is LTE in backup mode, or because I've gone into work from home mode, I still can remediate on demand based off of the business policies, whether that's voice and video, voice, video, and email, right? I get to decide what's important in my network and remediate it over a single link. That's the power of DMPO.
Yeah, I'll talk to customers when we're kind of doing a demo or I'm whiteboarding, is talk to them about, let's take a look at your traffic going site to site, your traffic going site to data center, your traffic going site to cloud, and show them that they literally, a TCP or a UDP session, I can be on a voice call, I can be on Office 365, literally pull a link, my primary link on the internet, and we're talking again a sub-second failover. The TCP or UDP session stays up, and oftentimes the user doesn't even know we just moved everything over to another link. And that's simply not possible with the kind of flow-based other technologies that don't have gateways. It can be considerably different. I do want to go back. You mentioned forward error correction, and I just want to go through this real quick. I get real excited talking to customers to sometimes just kind of demonstrate that what are we really talking about keeping track of an application. And what's one of the trickiest ones, right, is a phone call from end to end, right? And in the past, we've typically put in MPLS networks because an MPLS, we could mark a bit with a DSCP tag of 46 and it carries an EF express forward through my MPLS, and I can kind of guarantee a quality of service end to end. But we come in here now as a company in VeloCloud, these SD-WAN technologies, and say, okay, we're going to be able to deliver that voice reliably across the internet. Well, how are you going to do that? And so what I'll talk to customers about, mention that DMPO, is that this technology can literally keep track of an application. So, if this is the RTP stream, right, the UDP packets that are leaving my front door one location, they're going to another location, and maybe I'm missing packet 2 and 3 and 4 out of order, and I'm missing packet 5. That's usually the death knell in the past to an application, particularly a real-time voice or video. And this technology, VeloCloud's, DMPO and packet duplication, their version of forward error correction, has the ability to literally on just that per application basis start to duplicate that stream. Now, let's say I've still got some loss in the middle, right? Now I'm missing packet 1, I got 2, 3, 4, and 5 in order, I'm missing 2. It adds those together, right? And I now have fixed an application. I've actually delivered and made a happy application across the internet, even with packet loss. And you talked about our lab environment. We actually tested this in the lab and found that we could deliver voice up to 30% packet loss and still have a phone call. The SIP session stays up, and we've seen that out in the field as well. So I wanted to pass that on. I was going to get a kick of going through some of this. So we're kind of starting to wind down in time here, but I did want to get to a couple of key things. We talked a little bit about Office 365 and how we've got cloud gateways to get there. But in the interest of time, talk to me a little bit. There's been a lot of change in cloud security, and I know your team has been working a lot with both VMware and Checkpoint together on some new offerings. So could you talk a little bit about what you're seeing there?
Yeah, so the last big piece of the software-defined world, right? We saw, whether it's NSX was your software-defined data center, there's other competitors in that space, and we saw VSS in the switching space, and SD-WAN, and now cloud control full stack. The last piece was this hardware-defined firewall. I had to, in my data center, I had to buy a box. I had to size that box for throughput. I had to size that box for, you name it, for sessions, for VPN count, for what I wanted to turn on. And we saw competitors in this space say, hey, stop doing that. We're going to go and move to the cloud. Well, that was great, but every time I talk to those pure cloud customers, I go, great, and what do you have in your data center? And 100% of the time, 100% of the time, they've given me another vendor, right? Because they still needed that footprint. And so we recognize there are different security profiles. Work from home is different than nomadic, work from a hotel, work from Starbucks is different than a branch, and it's different than a data center. And every customer is different, and some are going to want to inspect east-west traffic, not just north-south, meaning branch to branch. I want to inspect what's going on. And so we partner with Checkpoint, which with their Infinity product line, which is a great marriage. They're partnered very closely with VMware. We've actually been in R&D since October, so almost a full year now with the two, getting tighter integrated, understanding this gateway architecture. And so what we're saying is our applications have left our network, our employees have left our network. Why are we coming back to the data center to hit a firewall? It was the last great application there. But we also know you may still have a need. You may host web apps, 80 and 443, whether private or public. You may have third-party rails that you've got a DMZ that you allow a managed service provider into the network, right? So we still have a functional need to have a security appliance right there by the application, but one management plane. And that's what we do with Checkpoint. So we can use like the Quantum line, the physical hardware in the data center, but all of our traffic, our branches, our work from home, et cetera, we're going to go to a gateway that's encrypted from VeloEdge to VeloGateway. And the same way I talked about that gateway being an on-ramp into Azure or AWS or SaaS or the CDN networks, it's also an on-ramp into CloudGuard Connect, which is all of the same functionality of Threat Cloud, the 100% catch rate, all of the stuff Checkpoint brings to the table. And we've simply taken that and distributed it into every Azure environment across the globe for 99.99% uptime. And so it's a path that's really designed to go, hey, I'm gonna protect you from branch to application. I'm gonna do GeoIP lookup, but before I meant I'm gonna protect you performance-wise. Now I mean I'm gonna protect you security-wise. I'm gonna protect as close to that application and create really this network that you can hang a person or an application anywhere in the world and have reliability of service with VeloCloud and reliability of protection with Checkpoint.
One of the things I like about it too, the new Checkpoint offering, if I kind of take this as a PC or a laptop out there working mobily, there's clients now that come in and that client's going to allow me to be both protected when I'm out there surfing, as well as VPN back into the network to get to resources. So it's a pretty exciting new addition on that Checkpoint side of a client that can be both, secure web gateway while you're traveling and a VPN client coming back in. And just so everybody knows too, when we talk to customers on this side, this is pretty technical stuff and it's not an all or nothing. We have had a number of SD-WAN instances where we're bringing SD-WAN VeloCloud in, but we're using a customer's Zscaler, or we're using a customer's Palo Alto Prisma instance. Or we come in and they want to keep their Palo Altos back at headquarters, but they want to look at Checkpoint as a cloud and marry those two. So the other ability too on the VeloCloud side is that edge device can really steer any number of ways. You could take VLANs and send it to one security platform, another VLAN, another user a different way. So there's a lot that we can do, kind of slicing and dice on the security side. It's part of a big part of the project. The other thing I wanted to talk about too was I think this is a little known piece in the SD-WAN game, is the idea of segmentation across a network. We're seeing this a lot on the PCI and HIPAA side, but more and more people, as they're moving to this network of clouds, are then also trying to figure out how do they segment their network and give people certain access or devices or point of sale systems, things like that. So talk a little bit about where you're seeing kind of segmentation and its use out there and some of the important points.
Yeah, and I'll be quick with the interest of time as we butt up, but so segmentation, depending on who you talk to, the SD-WAN provider, they'll say it's a VPN, it's a VRF, you mentioned earlier, virtual route forwarding table. Here's what we like about it. First off, our largest global customer is a Fortune 50 customer, and they're running, I think, a total of 5 segments, right? So 5 VRFs through the network. Okay. So much of the complexity of MPLS routing, you mentioned BGP, we talked about VRFs. The automated overlays of SD-WAN remove that complexity. So being able to take 64 VRFs or 32 VRFs, VeloCloud it's on the roadmap for their release. They do 16 today. In their 4.0 train, it'll go up to, I think, 64. It's just completely unnecessary. But here is the big thing. Here is what segmentation drives, or what it means for VeloCloud. That path to compliance, PCI, HIPAA. We talk about the idea of being able to treat traffic differently, right? So in this example you have up here, maybe you've got a application, maybe you've got an MPLS from a specific provider. Think of a clearinghouse in financial, like a Fiserv, right? Maybe they're dropping an MPLS circuit into my network. And so I can pin the traffic that says anything destined for this only will go over that private wired link. If it goes down, stop all the other magic that Matt Douglas has talked to me about. I don't want it moving to another link. I don't want you choosing best path. I want to pin it there. That becomes important. The second piece is the gateway still can play a role, whether that's A, because I'm still protecting traffic, or B, because it's my gateway into a PCI network. So rather than dropping an MPLS link into each of my sites or retail stores or hospitals, I can build a VPN from that Velo gateway. And now I've got a secure tunnel, right? I've got a 256-bit encrypted tunnel, and everything underneath of it's encrypted. And we run a PCI segment. And this is, I think, one of the things people don't know. It's a well-kept secret of VeloCloud. There's actually a PCI segment that you can enact through their gateway system. And so I can get a PCI compliant gateway from VeloCloud. And so now I've hit the easy button with segmentation. I've hit the easy button of connecting a PCI network in, because I'm just connecting it to the gateway, not to every single individual branch. I still have PCI segmentation and protection from branch to gateway. Obviously, I have it through my own, right? Any SD-WAN will do that back to your data center. But also by creating this PCI segmentation, everybody knows, if you've gone through these processes with QSAs and going through audits, they're a giant pain. And I've got to inspect everything in the network. when we get a QSA that comes in and we say, this is the PCI segment. This is all you have to audit. The rest, can't see it anyway. This is the only thing. And so by creating this PCI segment, I'm not only delivering all the same other benefits that you have with VeloCloud. Instead of saying I just have to pin it to path A like this, like other SD-WANs would, we can do that, but we also can bring all those same benefits without introducing the added complexity because we've got a PCI segment or HIPAA or whatever it is.
Yep, that's great. Well, we have kind of gone up against time here. There's probably some other subjects we could get to, but this one I do want you to talk a little bit about what's coming up for our next session. Craig Connors, this is a pretty big deal for anybody out there. Tell them, well, just you explain kind of what this next session means and what Craig Connors' participation is.
Yeah, so Craig's a really sharp guy, very interesting kind of career path to get to where he's at. So he's the VP and Chief Technology Officer of the SD-WAN BU at VMware SD-WAN. He wrote some code. You may have heard one of the products he wrote the code for is a product called VeloCloud. And so we're very excited to have Craig join us for the next session. All of the stuff that we talked about of where we see it, the differentiators and why we chose it and where we see things going, we really welcome Craig's thought leadership as the person that was in the kind of ground zero of writing the software, writing the code that is VeloCloud. So he'll be joining us. That's going to be a phenomenal event. And I know we're supposed to be panelists, Matt. It's going to be a big challenge to not just sit back and listen as well.
Exactly
just act like a participant.
I think that's exactly the case. And I know we're over 2 minutes, but I want to mention one last thing. And anybody who's on here, if wants to send a note to chat to Gabby there, we can also send you, John, tell us a little bit about the LinkedIn learning that you've been doing here with some teams on VMware too and what's coming up there, because I'd like them to know that.
Yeah, so tomorrow at 2 o'clock, we've got our next session. So we did a 2-part series, and you haven't missed anything if you missed the first part. It's myself and the VP of Telco and the VP of Product. So VP of Telco, Yerezir Coney from Checkpoint, and Mark Vonningham from VMware, their VP of Product, really talking about when we say why we partner with Checkpoint. I can give you all the technological reasons, and they're abundant, and Matt and team go through those. But really, it's also understanding that we don't want you to sacrifice. We don't want you to choose an SD-WAN because it also has security, or security because it also has SD-WAN. We went out and got best of breed. We think Velo's best of breed. We think Checkpoint's best of breed, and CBTS is the wrapper that allows the customer to consume it just as easily as if it was one single OEM. And really, like I said, since October, we've been working hand in hand, the 3 companies, CBTS, Checkpoint, and VMware, to craft and build what that integration and what that product looks like. And so tomorrow at 2 o'clock will be the second session, which is if I consume VeloCloud and Checkpoint CloudGuard Connect to solve my problems of today, which was the session we did last week, how does it set me up to solve the challenges of tomorrow, of 5G, of the Internet of Things, et cetera? So it's 2 o'clock on LinkedIn Live. And really hope you can join us there and hopefully kind of take this conversation and take it to the next level of what is around the corner and how can I prepare for it.
Well, John, thank you. It's always a blast getting together and talking about these kinds of things. I know we didn't get to any questions here, but Gabby's, as always, will send us over those questions you had, and we'll respond to people individually. So, John, Gabby, thanks for another great event, and we look forward to seeing you guys here next week.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, guys.